Okay, so now guys, we like to start with the functions. Okay, user-defined functions. Okay, user-defined functions, very important and very powerful. Now, you see that in the programming language also you get by default the functions which you can use. Obviously, there are a lot of functions, right? Like you have seen, we have used count function, the replace function, there are a lot of things. But we have one more advantage that if we think that there is a to in order to calculate something, in order to achieve what we want to achieve in a project, there is no function available, you know then we can also go and create our own functions. It can be 500 lines function, it can be 5 line function, that doesn't matter. Fundamental remains the same, right? That's what they call UDF, user defined functions, and they are very simple. So we're starting here with fx 1.0. Let me show you first of all how to create a very simple function in this very first lecture. This function is a very basic, as I said, going to be basic. Does not make any, it is not going to make any sense to you that why you want to create such a function. But let's start from the scratch. Okay. So see guys, we use actually the word called def, right? We use the word called def, and then you start writing here the function name, whatever the name you want to give. For example, I want to give a function name called uh, info, right? Start open parenthesis, close parenthesis, put the colon, and then indentation is automatically there. And let's say I want to say that, you know, hello. For example, this is a function I want to create. Or let's say we want to give some information that add means summing up two or more than two numbers. Okay, this is what I want to print. This is the function block. You can write here, as I said, even 500 lines. It depends what you are trying to achieve. Okay, so this is a function which is called info, right? If you guys have a VBA experience, then in the VBA it starts with the word called function itself. We go and write like this just for information, right? And in other programming languages it may be different. Like suppose M code, in M code you write the function, in a very different way. Suppose you go and write like this, put the equals to sign and then arrow, this way. So my point is very simple, that functions are everywhere. In Excel itself you have the function will be everywhere, because it's all about calculating the things, doing the calculations, right? Now if I try to run this, I hope you got the point. If you run this, nothing will happen. See that? Why this print line is not executed? When you run the function, you always have to call the function. You always need to call the function from outside. Now, what do you mean by that? Means that function themselves do not run. As you see, if I run this, nothing is going to happen, right? If I remove this def keyword from here, this line, we will have the print function. We will have this print function executed, right? But the print is inbuilt function. We are talking about the function which I can create, right? So when we say that you have to call the function, it only means that you have to go somewhere and say that I want this function. Which function? Well, info function. Like this, for example, I have written this function here. I have written this function here. Can you see that? Right? You will not write the same word again, because once the function is created, it is created. Your function name is info, right? So when you're writing this in this way, what happens when this program runs, it sees that there is a info function written over here. The code immediately finds where is it written, and then it start executing, isn't it? So if I try to run this, now see what is going to happen. You see that now the print statement has run. Beautiful. If I try to write a function which does not exist, I have not created info2, what will happen? What will happen, guys? See that? Same error. Info2 is not defined. Is it clear? Right? Nowhere we have this restriction that in this module, in this window, you can write only one function. Maybe you're doing addition, maybe you're doing subtraction, who knows? You can add as many functions as you want, right? For example, I'm just going to say that this function is square. For example, this is telling me the information about the square. Okay, so I'll say that a square has 4 sides and all are equal. For example, right? I've written these two functions over here. You can see that, right? If I don't call this function is not going to be called, and there's no compulsion. But why in first place you're going to create a function which you never actually going to call? Make sense, right? But I mean, if I've created this, it's fine, perfectly fine. System will not create any issue, right? System will only see the info and it goes there. And it goes there. So point is, this is not going to be executed. Are you getting the point? Otherwise, if you run these two lines, print this and print this, you know that you can't stop from running these two lines back to back. But now they are actually a part of their respective functions. So unless this function is called, we are not going to execute this. Make sense? Right? So suppose now I'm going to call this. You can call them in whatever way you want, it doesn't matter. For example, first info and then square. Look at this. Right? Now what happens if I remove this and I say that, okay, I want this function to run here. What is going to happen now? See this? I'm going to run this, right? Now the square has 4 sides and all are equal. This is the first line which is going to be executed because the code starts from top to bottom. So the moment the code finds this, the code is immediately going to see where is the function, and then it executes all those 100, 200, 300, 400 lines and then come back here. And then it goes and execute that particular section and finally the code will rest. Amen. Right? So I hope this is clear to you now. We cannot afford to remove this colon. Colon has to be there, right? If I try to write like this, again, I'm not putting any indentation, right? You see, you will get the error. If I just put one space, now the indentation is there. There is no challenge. I said this before also. This print and this print are different, so they don't have to be in the same indentation, right? But the point is, as I said, to make the code readable, beautiful, we don't do all that. So if I'm keeping this here, let me keep this thing here. It's more readable, but even if you don't keep it, that's fine. But yes, if I try to write something inside this, then I cannot start from here. Same rules, right? Which you have seen in the if and the loops. I hope this is clear now. So can we now go and create the functions? Yes, we can go and now create the functions, right? So let me just close this. Let's go and say Control C, Control V. Now, as I said that this is just the basic, the fundamentals. So I was telling you this, I mean, I was giving you this type of example. But now, let me give you some practical example. Okay? See, instead of this, I want to do some calculation. Yes, we want to do some calculation. Suppose you go and create here a function called addition. Okay, and this is you go and keep this as square, for example, square or maybe something else. I don't know. Okay, so let's create this as subtraction. Okay, right now I'm going to call these functions one by one, but this time we will have some calculation. So I'm going to say addition. You please go and run at this point in time. Okay, but what I actually want to add, so this is where, guys, we will go and write here the arguments. Arguments. Have you heard this word? Of course. Many of you, I have taught Excel, in Excel also we use these arguments. Argument means parameters basically. People often say that, that is there any difference between argument and parameter? Well, they are same, they're same. But in Python, generally what happens when you're trying to pass in some value, that is called argument, and where it is being supplied, that is called parameter. But in more or less they are same. What I'm saying is, when you write the function, when you write inbuilt functions, for example, guys, in Python also we have used the functions, right? I mean, you saw that how count was working. We were able to count the values. They always use the parameters, isn't it? Right? If I try to create some list here like this, what is this? These are all called the parameters or arguments. Every function has these parameters, right? So what function does is function takes these inputs and then go and do the calculation. When I try to write like this, I know in the background this will give me the count of the value which I will write inside this, right? This will count the two number in my list. I mean, this is how I understand this, correct? I don't bother what is happening behind the scenes, because obviously you press enter, you get the answer, but in the background there must be some calculation which is going on, isn't it? Right? So this is the same calculation which we are now going to write here, because this is our own function, not an inbuilt function. So I can design this same way. Same way the functions which we are using, inbuilt function, they are also designed by those company developers, obviously. Every function, be it any language. Okay. So I say that I want to I want to get here the answer of 3 and 4. I want to pass in two numbers because we are talking about here addition. So I say that I want to add these two numbers and I want to see the result, right? Again, very basic example I am taking. So see, this 3 and 4, they're going to come here, right? This addition, the function is going to be called, and Python will check that, okay, so this is the function. Now I have to, go and do the calculation, correct? So if you are supplying here two numbers, here we must go and receive those two numbers. So I'm going to write here two parameters, right? X and Y. So at the receiving end, this is called parameter and this is called argument, if you want to be very specific about it. But otherwise you can use whatever term you want to. It's for me it's same, right? See, once x and y is going to come automatically, x is going to come as 3 and y is going to come as 4. It automatically follows the process, right? So here what I want to do is I want to say that store equals to, or result equals to, whatever. We will simply multiply these numbers, right? And here I will simply say result is, and then we'll say store. Is it making a sense to you? Right? This is what I want. The result is whatever. So now when I run this, let's see that if I run this, one second, this is a new module, so control A, and I just want to run this from here. Yeah. So you see that the result is 7, 3 plus 4. User does not have to understand what is happening behind the curtains, isn't it? Right? User just know that I have to write the function, and that's it. Now you may be thinking that anytime a person can see the function. Yes, of course, he can see the function. So what? But you see, as I said that, there can be 500 lines over here, and there can be 500 lines over here, and there can be more functions. So down the line here, where you're writing the code, you never know that where you have to actually need that function for some particular type of a calculation. So you just go and say that, okay, I know I have created that function. I'm just going to say that, okay, this is what I want. Automatically, that function script, the code will be called and it is going to run. Okay, this is how it is. In fact, you can also use this function in a different module, which I will be teaching you. So user cannot see that. I mean, we can directly use this function somewhere else also, not in this module, but in a different module, right? So you got the point now, right? Same way in the subtraction also, I want to go and create two numbers. Let's say A and B, right? So here also, I will say store equals to A minus B, correct? And so we'll say, I'm just going to print the answer, nothing else. Okay, so I say that store. I'll say that store 2 and store 1, for example, right? And so I'm going to call that function subtraction, and then let's say I'm just going to write 44 2. So both the functions are going to be called and they will do their job. Got the point, right? And remember that A minus B means A minus B. 44 minus 2 will happen. If you want to do the B minus A, you want to create some condition, yes, you can do that. There's no challenge. Let me do this. But right now, let's go and run this first of all. Okay, so I'm seeing here an error. Okay, what is an error? Result is, okay, I'm sorry, this store, it has to be 1, right? So let's run the code again. So you can see one is result is 7 and the another one is 42, which is correct, right? So in fact, I can say result is this one. Is this clear? Right? Now, what happens if by chance I'm not, so let me just comment this for the time being. Now guys, what happens if I just give the one parameter? What do you think now? Let me run this code, right? I'm just providing one parameter. See this, argument or parameter. Missing one required positional argument. This is the same error we get otherwise also in the inbuilt functions. If there is any optional parameter, then it's fine, but otherwise you have to be very particular about the number of parameters, right? So this is something you always have to understand. You can't do this. Now the next question comes that who will decide that how many parameters I want? I mean, why I have written here 2? Can I not write here 3 parameters? Well, it's up to you guys. When you make the program, you know that how many inputs I have to take from the user, isn't it? When you're creating a project, you know that what information you need from the person. For example, you're creating some lookup function. You want one ID, and then second thing you want is data, where that can where that particular ID can be searched. So obviously you will create a function which can use 2 parameters. Okay, so this is always, it depends upon the project to project, how many parameters we decided. But one thing is sure that once you have defined the parameters, same number of parameters must be written here. Now what is going to happen if I don't write here x and y? Well, if you don't write here x and y, then what is going to happen here? Again, you will get the error, right? Now the question is that why I'm writing here x and y? Can I just simply not write 3 and 4? Isn't it? And then can I not just put this, comment? Well, you already know that function has to be called from somewhere. If I try to run this, nothing is going to happen, guys, right? Nothing is going to happen. Function has to be called from outside. So you can't directly write here a number because it is not going to run. So we must go and have some variables. Yes. So when you go and call the function, automatically function checks how many arguments we are supplying and how many arguments the function basically is going to have. It is designed to take, right? So that is something Python will take care of it. I hope I am able to clear your all the doubts, right? So this is how we can create the function. Now let's say you want to, in case of addition, y plus x, x plus y is the same thing. But let's say you want to say that, I always want to see the subtraction of, smaller number from the bigger number, irrespective of the fact what I'm going to write here, whether 2 comma 44 or 44 comma 2, I always want 40. Let's say, for example. Yes, so you can do that. So we can simply go and write here, it's the same coding which we have learned so far, but we are just trying to create the functions so that whenever we want to call, we can call. So you see, this is kind of like, you have written many programs, and now any point in time you want to call some one program and then second program, you can easily do that, right? So here I can say that if A is greater than B, then our answer should be this line, right? Store 2 equals to A minus B, right? Otherwise, if A is not greater than B, for example, then we want store 2 should be equals to B minus A. What do you say, right? This is how it is. And if both are equal, so I can just go and say equals to, for example, right? And finally, we should have the value printed. So this I can cut and I can go and write here, because ultimately whatever the calculation will have, it is going to be printed outside the if, right? So if I now try to run this, let me run this. So we should see here 40 in the subtraction, right? So let's see that. Okay, so it's giving me 42. Yeah, sorry, 44 minus 2 is 42. Now what happens if I try to put here a number which is bigger than 44? So the program again should give me the positive number, the way the program is created, 56. Okay, so this is how, guys, we go and create these functions. So what we have learned, they're always to be called from the outside. We just write their name and nothing else, and we provide the arguments. Same number of arguments are supposed to be here. If there is a mismatch in the arguments, whether here or here, function will not execute, right? It is mandatory to supply the right amount of parameters, as it happens in inbuilt functions also.